The massive chamber of the Galactic Security Council echoed with laughter. Representatives from a dozen star systems wiped tears from their various optical organs as they reviewed the latest intelligence reports from the Sol system. Commander Zekthau of the Andromedan Empire stood at the center of the assembly, his crystalline form pulsing with amusement. "Look at these primitive creatures," he said, projecting holographic images of Earth's maximum security prisons. "They lock their most dangerous individuals in concrete boxes. How quaint." The Vorthan delegate, a being of pure energy contained in a humanoid shell, crackled with mirth. "My species hasn't used physical containment for 10,000 cycles. We simply adjust the quantum frequencies of criminal minds. But these humans, they still use metal bars." Around the chamber, more laughter erupted. The Galactic Council had been monitoring Earth for decades, watching as humanity took its first stumbling steps into space. They had observed human wars, studied their primitive weapons, and cataloged their laughably simple security systems. "Their most feared warriors carry chemical-propelled projectile weapons," noted Ambassador Creel from the Centauri Collective, her 6 arms gesturing dismissively, "while our peacekeepers wield antimatter disruptors and gravity manipulation devices." The Council's military advisor, a towering silicon-based life form from the Outer Rim, brought up more data. Their special forces, which they consider elite, still rely on physical conditioning and basic tactics. Compare that to our neural-enhanced shock troops who can phase through matter and perceive time in multiple dimensions. "Should we even bother with containment protocols when we process Earth for resource extraction?" asked a minor delegate. "It seems their criminals would pose no more threat than their soldiers." Commander Zekthau's form brightened with confidence. "Standard suppression protocols should suffice. A few dozen security drones could pacify their entire criminal population. After all, what threat could beings who still use metal projectiles pose to us?" The Council voted unanimously. Earth would be claimed as a resource world, its population relocated to labor colonies. The operation would commence in 30 rotations. As the delegates filed out, none noticed the small surveillance drone that had been monitoring their meeting. It belonged to no known species in the Council's database. Its design was crude by galactic standards, clearly of Earth origin, yet it had somehow penetrated their most sophisticated security systems undetected. The drone transmitted its recordings through a quantum entanglement communicator, a technology humanity wasn't supposed to possess for another 1,000 years. The signal reached a small, unremarkable satellite orbiting Earth, which related to an equally unremarkable building in the industrial district of Prague. Inside that building, a man sat alone in darkness. His appearance was forgettable, medium height, graying hair, wearing a simple black suit. The kind of person who could disappear in any crowd. The other inmates at Supermax Prison ADX Florence had known him by reputation only, speaking his name in whispers, the Baba Yaga. John Wick had been released 6 months ago, his life sentence commuted due to administrative errors that no one seemed able to explain. The errors were, of course, carefully orchestrated by certain individuals who understood that Earth's survival might depend on monsters rather than heroes. As John watched the Council's proceedings, his expression remained unchanged. He had killed for less than the threatened enslavement of humanity. He reached for an old-style rotary phone, an anachronism that most would mock, but which was impossible to hack or trace by conventional means. "Yes," he said simply when the call connected. "You saw." The voice on the other end belonged to a woman known in certain circles as the director. "I saw. They're coming for us. All of us." "Yes. Will you?" John considered the question, though they both knew his answer. He had tried to leave the life behind, to find peace. But peace, it seemed, was a luxury Earth could no longer afford. "Tell the others," he said finally. "Tell them the Galactic Council wants to play with Earth's criminals." "And what should I tell them about you?" For the first time in months, something shifted in John's expression. It wasn't quite a smile. John Wick didn't smile. It was something colder, more primal. The look of a predator who had just scented prey. "Tell them the Baba Yaga is working again." He hung up the phone and stood, moving to a hidden panel on the wall. Behind it lay an arsenal that would have impressed any military force on Earth, though the Galactic Council would have dismissed it as primitive junk. They had no way of knowing that each weapon had been modified with salvaged alien technology, carefully reverse-engineered from crash scout ships and captured probes. The Council thought they were dealing with common criminals locked in concrete boxes. They believed Earth's most dangerous individuals were safely contained, easily handled. They had no concept of what human criminals truly were. Not just breakers of law, but survivors, adapters, individuals who had learned to thrive outside the boundaries of civilization. More importantly, they had no understanding of what happened when Earth's monsters had a common enemy. In prisons around the world, similar scenes were playing out. Maximum security facilities experienced simultaneous system failures. Certain inmates found their cells mysteriously unlocked. Guards suffered from food poisoning at precisely the right moments. Transportation vehicles developed mechanical problems that required unscheduled stops. Within hours, some of Earth's most dangerous individuals were free. Not the petty thieves or even the ordinary murderers. Those remained locked away. This was a careful selection, the ones who had skills that might matter in the coming conflict. Master assassins, genius hackers, weapons specialists, strategic minds that had once orchestrated global crime networks. They received the same message John had watched, along with a simple choice: fight for Earth's freedom or remain in their cages when the aliens came to process the planet. It wasn't much of a choice at all. In government black sites and military installations, certain officials who had long prepared for this possibility activated contingency plans. They had always known first contact might not be peaceful. They had hoped Earth's military forces would be sufficient. But hope, as any criminal could tell you, was a poor strategy. Sometimes you needed monsters to fight monsters. As John Wick loaded his weapons and prepared for war, similar scenes played out across the globe. The Yakuza enforcer who could kill with origami paper. The Serbian smuggler who had never lost a cargo. The British thief who could crack any security system ever designed. The American con artist who had convinced entire governments he was their trusted advisor. Each had their own skills, their own methods, their own reasons for accepting this mission. Some fought for redemption, others for the challenge, and some simply because they had nowhere else to go. But all understood one fundamental truth. The Galactic Council had made a fatal error. They had mocked Earth's method of containing criminals in concrete and steel. They had laughed at the primitive nature of human crime and punishment. They believed that beings who required physical prisons must be weak, easily controlled, barely worth considering as a threat. They were about to learn why Earth needed such strong prisons in the first place. The countdown to the invasion had begun. 30 rotations. In galactic terms, barely a heartbeat. But for Earth's criminals, it was more than enough time. They had spent their lives operating in the shadows, striking from darkness, turning disadvantages into weapons. Now, they had an entire planet to defend and aliens who underestimated them. It was, in the professional opinion of several master criminals, the perfect setup for the greatest heist in human history, stealing Earth's freedom from would-be conquerors who thought they were dealing with primitives. The Galactic Council slept soundly that night's cycle, confident in their superiority. Meanwhile, Earth's monsters began to move, and in a nondescript building in Prague, the Baba Yaga checked his weapons one more time. The aliens wanted to process Earth for resources. They thought its criminals were a joke, easily handled by standard protocols. They had no idea that they had just declared war on individuals who had spent their entire lives learning one essential skill: how to make people regret underestimating them. The game had begun, and for the first time in galactic history, the hunters were about to become the hunted. The abandoned warehouse in Istanbul should have been empty. Instead, it hosted the most dangerous gathering in human history. They arrived like ghosts, through shadows, over rooftops, emerging from shipping containers, and in one memorable case, dropping through a skylight that hadn't existed 5 minutes earlier. John Wick was among the first to arrive, his presence acknowledged with subtle nods from those who recognized him. The Japanese woman in the corner, polishing a blade that seemed to sing in the dim light, was Akiko Yamashita. She had once eliminated an entire crime family with nothing but chopsticks and a profound understanding of pressure points. The massive Russian examining explosive devices with delicate care was Viktor the chemist Volkov, whose artistic approach to destruction had earned him life sentences in 12 countries. More arrived as the night deepened. The ghost, no one knew their real name, simply appeared in the center of the room, having walked past 14 armed guards without triggering a single alarm. Lucia Moretti sauntered in wearing designer clothes and a smile that had launched 1,000 frauds. Marcus King, the hacker whose digital fingerprints had never been found despite bringing down 3 governments' classified networks, set up his equipment in a corner. The meeting had been arranged by the Continental, a network of neutral grounds that even the most violent criminals respected. Its representative, a distinguished woman known as the Adjudicator, stood at the front of the assembled group. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice cutting through the tension, "you've all seen the intelligence. In 28 days, the Galactic Council intends to invade Earth. They plan to process our planet for resources and enslave our population." A murmur ran through the crowd. These were people who trusted no one, yet the evidence was undeniable. Each had received the same intercepted transmissions, verified through their own networks. "They mock us," the Adjudicator continued. "They laugh at our prisons, our weapons, our methods. They believe Earth's criminals are weak, easily controlled primitives." Someone in the back laughed, a cold, sharp sound. It was Echo, the assassin who could mimic any voice, any sound, and had used this talent to orchestrate kills that appeared to be accidents, suicides, or natural causes. "Let them come," Echo said, switching between voices with each word. A child, an old man, a seductive woman, a growling beast. "We'll teach them why humans fear the dark." The Adjudicator raised a hand for silence. "The governments of Earth are mobilizing their forces, but we all know conventional military won't be enough. The aliens have technology centuries ahead of ours, which is why certain arrangements have been made." She gestured to a screen showing satellite imagery. "For the past 5 years, we've been collecting and reverse engineering alien technology from crash scout ships, captured probes, and other sources. Small pieces, nothing that would alert them to our capabilities." Marcus King spoke up from his corner, multiple screens reflecting off his glasses. "I've been analyzing their systems. Their technology is advanced, but it follows patterns, logic chains, predictable algorithms. They've been dominant for so long, they've forgotten how to think like the underdog." "What are you suggesting?" asked Chen Wei, whose organization had controlled Asia's underground weapons trade for decades. "I'm suggesting," Marcus continued, "that they've never faced opponents who specialize in asymmetric warfare. They expect us to line up our armies and fight conventionally. They're preparing for soldiers." He smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "They're not preparing for us." John Wick spoke for the first time, his voice quiet but carrying clearly through the room. 28 days. What's the plan?" The Adjudicator touched her tablet, bringing up a holographic display of Earth surrounded by alien tactical data. "We divide into cells. Each team will prepare a different aspect of Earth's defense. Not the military kind, they have that covered. We prepare the kind of warfare that doesn't appear in any civilized species' military manual." She began assigning teams. The hackers would work on infiltrating alien systems, not through brute force, but through the kind of social engineering and psychological manipulation that only humans seem to perfect. The chemists and weapons experts would develop new applications for captured alien technology, not to match their weapons, but to turn their advantages against them. The assassins would study every piece of data about alien physiology, looking for weaknesses that a species convinced of its own superiority would never think to protect. The thieves and infiltrators would prepare Earth cities for a kind of warfare the galaxy had never seen. Not between armies, but in shadows and alleys where technology meant less than cunning. "And me?" John asked. The Adjudicator met his eyes. "You, Mr. Wick, have a special assignment. We've identified the advanced teams that will arrive first. Small groups to establish beachheads and disable our defenses. The military will be watching for ships and invasion forces. But not for me. John understood immediately. Precisely. You and your selected team will be our welcoming committee. Over the following days, Earth's criminal underground transformed into something unprecedented. Old grudges were set aside temporarily. Resources that had been hoarded were shared. Information networks that had operated in isolation for decades suddenly connected. In Mexico City, cartel chemists worked alongside university professors who had been kidnapped for their knowledge, now willingly sharing expertise to develop compounds that could dissolve alien alloys. In Tokyo, Yakuza tattoo artists studied alien anatomy diagrams, determining whether species might be vulnerable to the precise pressure and piercing techniques that had been perfected over centuries. London's most notorious forger examined alien documentation systems, finding flaws in their quantum encryption that stemmed from one simple oversight. The aliens had never needed to guard against deception from within. Their society was too ordered, too hierarchical. They couldn't conceive of the human talent for lies. In the digital realm, something beautiful and terrible took shape. Hackers who had spent their careers attacking each other's systems now worked in concert. They discovered that alien technology, for all its advancement, had a crucial weakness. It was designed for efficiency, not paranoia. Their systems trusted each other implicitly, lacking the suspicious nature that human cybersecurity had developed through decades of constant attack. Marcus King coordinated the effort, building what he called poison pills, hidden subroutines that would lie dormant in any system they touched until activated. The aliens' own efficiency would be their downfall, spreading the infection across their entire network. But it was in the preparation for direct combat that Earth's criminals truly shone. They couldn't match alien technology in a straight fight, so they didn't plan to fight straight. Every criminal who had ever survived on the streets knew the first rule. There's no such thing as a fair fight. The Serbian smuggler, Dmitry Petrovich, had spent 20 years moving cargo through impossible routes. Now he designed supply lines that violated every principle of military logistics, but would be invisible to species that thought in terms of efficiency and order. Supplies cached in sewer systems, weapons hidden in children's playgrounds, ammunition stored in graveyards, places that civilized species would never think to look. The con artists worked their own angle, studying alien psychology and communication patterns. They learned that these species had evolved in relatively peaceful societies once they achieved space travel. Deception between species was rare, formal, following protocols. They had no defense against the human ability to lie with a smile, to project sincerity while planning betrayal. As the days counted down, strange things began happening around Earth. Certain buildings in major cities were quietly evacuated. Their purposes changed. Homeless populations in specific areas were relocated, paid well to move along. Construction projects that had been stalled for years suddenly resumed, working only at night. John Wick moved between the teams, coordinating and preparing. He selected his strike team carefully. Professionals who could remain calm when facing the impossible, who could adapt when plans failed, who understood that survival often meant doing things that civilized beings couldn't conceive of. With 10 days remaining, they received intelligence that changed everything. The advanced teams weren't just scouts. They were processing units designed to begin converting Earth's atmosphere for the incoming colonization force. Once they landed and activated their terraforming equipment, millions would die within days. The stakes had risen, but so had Earth's determination. In hidden workshops, captured alien weapons were modified in ways their creators never intended. Energy weapons designed for clean, efficient killing were altered to cause maximum pain and fear. Defensive shields meant to protect were reversed to trap. Medical devices intended to heal were reprogrammed to do far worse. "We're becoming monsters," one of the younger criminals said, watching a demonstration of a particularly nasty weapon modification. "No, yon corrected quietly. We're being what we've always been. The aliens just don't know it yet." The Baba Yaga understood something the others were still learning. The Galactic Council thought they were civilized because they had advanced technology and ordered societies. But civilization was a luxury built on safety. Take away that safety, threaten what people loved, and see how quickly civilization crumbled. Humans had never had that luxury. They had evolved on a death world, surrounded by predators, fighting for every scrap of survival. Their criminals weren't aberrations. They were examples of what humans could become when pushed to extremes. And now an alien alliance had pushed all of humanity to that extreme. As the final week began, Earth's monsters were ready. Not with armies or fleets, but with the kind of warfare that had no name because civilized species had never needed to invent it. They waited in shadows, prepared traps in places that shouldn't exist, and sharpened skills that galactic law had never thought to forbid because no one had imagined them possible. The Galactic Council's advanced teams were approaching, confident in their superiority, secure in their technology, certain of their success. They had studied Earth's military capabilities and found them wanting. They had analyzed human society and deemed it primitive. They had evaluated the threat level and classified it as minimal. They had done everything except ask the one question that mattered. What kind of species needs maximum security prisons? They were about to find out. The first Galactic Council advanced ship entered Earth's atmosphere at 0300 hours GMT, its stealth systems rendering it invisible to conventional radar. The teardrop-shaped vessel glided silently over the Pacific Ocean, its crew of 6 preparing to establish a terraforming beacon that would begin converting Earth's atmosphere for their species. They never saw John Wick's team coming. The ambush point was carefully chosen, a remote stretch of coastline in Oregon where the ship's pre-programmed landing protocols would bring them down. The aliens had selected it for its isolation, unaware that isolation worked both ways. John lay prone on a cliff overlooking the landing zone, his rifle, a hybrid of human engineering and salvaged alien power cells, trained on the designated touchdown point. Beside him, Sophia Al-Azwar controlled a pack of attack dogs that had been surgically enhanced with alien sensory organs, giving them the ability to detect species that human senses couldn't perceive. 2 minutes out, Marcus King's voice crackled through their modified comm systems. The hacker was stationed in a van 5 miles away, his equipment painting a detailed picture of the approaching ship through stolen alien scanning technology. "Remember," John said quietly to his team, "we need one alive for interrogation. The rest are expendable." "Copy," came the responses. In addition to Sophia, the strike team included Kazuki, a former Yakuza enforcer who had modified traditional Japanese weapons with alien materials, Sarah Chun, whose expertise in poisons had evolved to include compounds that targeted non-terrestrial biochemistry, and Zero, whose ability to remain completely motionless for days had made him Earth's most patient killer. The ship descended, its hull shimmering as it displaced air. To the aliens inside, this was routine, another primitive world to process, another species to catalog before extinction or enslavement. Their commander, a crystalline being designated Zektar, reviewed the mission parameters one final time. "Atmospheric processors ready," reported their scientist. "Local fauna shows no signs of awareness." Initiating landing sequence. The ship touched down with barely a whisper, its landing struts adjusting to the sandy ground. A hatch opened with a soft hiss, and a ramp extended. The first alien to emerge was their scout, a lithe creature with multiple optical organs that could see across the entire electromagnetic spectrum. It died before its foot touched Earth's soil. John's shot took it through what passed for its brainstem, the modified bullet designed to disrupt the creature's silicon-based neural pathways. The body hadn't even finished falling when Sophia's dogs erupted from concealed positions, their augmented senses allowing them to track the panicking aliens inside the ship. Chaos exploded across the landing zone. The aliens' training had prepared them for military resistance, organized forces with energy weapons and defensive positions. It had not prepared them for what humans called guerrilla warfare. Kazuki moved like smoke, his katana singing through the air. The blade had been reforged with metal salvage from an alien hull, its edge now capable of slicing through their personal shields. He took the second alien's arm off at what might have been a shoulder, the creature's screams filling the air with harmonics that hurt human ears. The aliens tried to retreat to their ship, but Zero had already been inside for 30 seconds. The sniper had positioned himself in the vessel's cargo bay hours before it landed, having correctly predicted their approach vector. His suppressed weapon made soft coughing sounds as he eliminated the pilot and engineer before they could seal the hatches. One more hostile, designation unknown, Marcus called out. It's not showing on standard scans. A shimmer in the air was the only warning before the ship's military escort decloaked. This alien was different, larger, heavily armored, carrying weapons that hummed with lethal energy. It moved with the confidence of a species that had dominated the galaxy for millennia. Sarah Chun watched it stride down the ramp, her fingers dancing across the triggers of her modified dart gun. She fired 3 times in rapid succession, each dart loaded with a different cocktail of toxins. The first shattered against the alien's shields. The second penetrated, but seemed to have no effect. The third made the creature stumble. Interesting, she murmured into her calm. Primary nervous system is decentralized. Switching to Compound 7. The military escort raised its weapon, energy coalescing at the barrel. It never got the chance to fire. Sophia's lead dog, 90 pounds of muscle and alien-enhanced reflexes, hit it from the side. The creature's shields were designed to stop energy weapons and projectiles, not physical impacts from biological entities. It went down hard, the dog's jaws finding a gap in its armor. Status, John commanded, maintaining his overwatch position. 5 hostiles down, 0 reported. 1 remaining, barricaded in the command center. Sarah, can you flush it out? Already on it. The chemist pulled a canister from her pack, its contents glowing with an unsettling light. Compound 12 reacts violently with their atmosphere processors. They'll have to evacuate or suffocate. She rolled the canister up the ramp. Within seconds, alarms blared inside the ship. The final alien, Commander Zektar, stumbled out, his crystalline form flickering between spectrums as he struggled to breathe. Kazuki was waiting, his blade pressed against what served as the creature's throat. Clear, John announced, rising from his position. He approached the captured commander, studying the alien with professional detachment. Marcus, can you translate? Already patched in, the hacker confirmed. Real-time translation online. John knelt beside the terrified commander. When he spoke, his words were rendered into harmonics the alien could understand. Your council mocked Earth's criminals. Called us primitive. Weak. He paused, letting the words sink in. This is what 6 of us did to your advance team. Imagine what happens when thousands of us are ready for your invasion. The commander's form pulsed with what might have been rage or fear. You ambushed us. No honor. No civilos varfare. Honor. Sarah laughed, the sound sharp as broken glass. We're criminals. We have no honor. We have survival. The interrogation that followed was brief, but informative. The commander, faced with techniques that violated every treaty on civilized warfare, revealed the invasion plans. 20 more advance teams were already en route. The main fleet would follow in days, expecting to find a terraformed world ready for colonization. They won't find that, John said quietly. He nodded to Sarah, who administered a paralytic agent that would keep the commander alive, but immobile. Package him for transport. The others will want to study his physiology. As the team cleaned up the site, erasing all evidence of the ambush, similar scenes played out across the globe. In the Australian outback, Aboriginal trackers who had learned their craft in the harshest prisons worked alongside tech-savvy thieves to trap an advance team in a web of their own shields. The aliens died of dehydration in the desert heat. Their technology turned against them. In the Amazon, a team led by a former cartel enforcer used the jungle itself as a weapon. The aliens' advanced sensors couldn't differentiate between the natural bioelectric fields of Earth's fauna and the carefully positioned human hunters. Poison darts, pitfalls lined with salvaged alien metals, and predators driven into a frenzy by pheromone bombs. The rainforest consumed the invaders without firing a single energy weapon. The Swiss Alps saw perhaps the most elegant elimination. A master thief known only as White Hat had spent 3 days infiltrating the alien landing site, moving through their perimeter with skills honed in the world's most secure facilities. She didn't attack them directly. Instead, she reprogrammed their own atmosphere processors to produce a compound lethal to their species, but harmless to Earth life. They died believing their own equipment had malfunctioned. Each victory provided more intelligence, more technology, more understanding of their enemy. The captured equipment was immediately distributed through the criminal networks, analyzed, and modified by minds that specialized in turning tools into weapons. In Tokyo, Akiko Yamashita studied the molecular structure of alien alloys, discovering they became brittle when exposed to certain sound frequencies that happened to match traditional Japanese flutes. Within hours, every criminal cell had the specifications for sonic weapons disguised as musical instruments. The Ghost team had captured intact shield generators, finding that while they were nearly impervious to directed energy, they had no defense against attacks from within. A person who could walk through security undetected could also walk through shields, placing explosives directly against alien hulls. But it was Marcus King's discovery that truly changed the game. While analyzing the captured command ship's computer core, he found something that made him whoop with delight. They're networked, he announced to an emergency meeting of cell leaders. Every ship, every piece of equipment, every soldier, all connected through quantum entanglement to their central command structure. They value efficiency above all else. So, asked one of the newer recruits. Marcus grinned like a shark. So, they've never encountered a virus. Not a biological one, a digital one. Their entire civilization is one big network with no firewalls, no isolation protocols, no concept of malicious code. Because in their society, why would anyone create something designed to cause harm? The implications were staggering. Every piece of captured equipment became a potential infection vector. Every interface with alien technology was an opportunity to plant dormant code that would spread through their entire fleet. As news of the successful ambushes spread through Earth's criminal underground, something unexpected happened. The various cells began sharing not just resources and information, but tactics and strategies. Prison gangs that had been blood enemies worked together. Hackers who had spent years attacking each other's systems collaborated on increasingly sophisticated viruses. The governments of Earth took notice. Military commanders who had initially scoffed at the idea of working with criminals found themselves studying after-action reports with growing respect. These weren't just random acts of violence. They were precisely coordinated strikes that maximized damage while minimizing risk. They're not fighting like soldiers, one general observed. They're fighting like survivors. With 5 days until the main fleet's arrival, John Wick stood in another warehouse, this one in Berlin. Before him gathered not just criminals, but military liaisons, intelligence operatives, and scientists. The line between lawful and unlawful had blurred in the face of extinction. The advanced teams are neutralized, he reported. But the real fight is coming. They'll come in force, with shields our conventional weapons can't penetrate, and technology we can barely comprehend. Then, we don't fight conventionally, said a voice from the back. It was the director, emerging from shadows with her usual theatrical flair. Ladies and gentlemen, Earth's governments have agreed to a temporary arrangement. For the duration of this crisis, certain activities will be overlooked. In exchange, you will share your methods with military forces worldwide. A murmur ran through the crowd. Pardons were one thing, but actively working with law enforcement was another. Yet the stakes were clear. Survival trumped old grudges. John nodded slowly. Then, we teach them to fight dirty, to think like criminals, to do whatever it takes to survive. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of killers, thieves, and worse. Because if we fail, there won't be any laws left to break. The countdown continued. 4 days until the main fleet arrived. 4 days to turn Earth's military forces into something the galaxy had never seen. An army that fought without honor, without rules, without mercy. The Galactic Council still believed they were dealing with primitives. They were about to learn that there was nothing more dangerous than a primitive species with its back against the wall, especially one that had spent millennia perfecting the art of survival at any cost. The main invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system with the confidence of conquerors who had subjugated 100 worlds. 300 ships arranged in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with energy shields that could withstand the heart of a star. Commander Zekthau himself led from the flagship, determined to personally oversee Earth's submission after the embarrassing silence from the advance teams. Supreme Commander, his tactical officer reported, "We've lost contact with all 20 advance units. Their last transmissions indicated successful landing, then nothing. Equipment malfunction," Zekthau dismissed. "These primitives probably knocked over some atmospheric processors. Begin the assault. Target their major population centers first. Fear will make them compliant." The fleet moved toward Earth with mechanical precision, unaware that their every movement was being tracked, analyzed, and prepared for. In bunkers around the world, human military forces watched alongside their new criminal advisors, waiting for the moment to strike. They're maintaining standard invasion formation, observed General Harrison, commander of Earth's Unified Defense Force. Beside him stood Lucia Moretti, the con artist whose ability to read behavior patterns had made her invaluable. Just like the simulations predicted, Lucia smiled, watching the alien fleet's approach. They're performing for an audience that isn't watching. Everything about their movement screams superiority, dominance, inevitability. They expect us to see this display and surrender. Will we? Her smile widened. "Oh, General, we're going to give them exactly what they expect to see." As the alien fleet approached Earth's orbit, every major city began broadcasting surrender signals. White flags appeared on government buildings. Military forces seemed to stand out. News networks, carefully coached by con artists who understood the art of deception, broadcast tearful pleas for mercy. Pathetic, Commander Zekthau sneered, watching the broadcasts. As expected, begin deployment of occupation forces. Minimal resistance protocols. The first wave of dropships launched from the fleet, carrying thousands of alien soldiers equipped for police action rather than warfare. They expected to find cowering primitives. They found something else entirely. In New York City, the first dropship landed in Central Park to establish a command center. The aliens emerged in perfect formation, their weapons powered down to stun settings. They made it exactly 50 meters before the ground beneath them liquefied. The park was actually a carefully prepared killing field. Victor, the chemist Volkov, had spent 3 days saturating the soil with a binary compound that remained inert until exposed to the specific energy signature of alien shields. The reaction was instant and violent. The ground became a corrosive soup that ate through their armor in seconds. Those who tried to fly out discovered the second trap. The trees weren't trees at all, but camouflage projectile systems designed by prison weapons experts who had spent decades creating lethal devices from harmless materials. Sharpened metal launched at velocities that shield systems, calibrated for energy weapons, couldn't stop. The squad leader managed to send a distress signal before Sophia's enhanced dogs brought him down. Around the world, similar scenes played out with vicious creativity. In London, aliens entering the financial district found themselves trapped in a maze of mirrors, simple reflective surfaces that confused their multi-spectrum vision and created infinite false readings on their sensors. While they stumbled in confusion, teams led by the ghost struck from angles that shouldn't have existed, using the mirrors to appear and disappear like lethal phantoms. Tokyo's trap was perhaps the most elegant. Akiko Yamashita had discovered that alien communication systems operated on quantum entanglement principles. She had also discovered that traditional Buddhist singing bowls, when struck at specific frequencies, created quantum interference patterns. The aliens landed in force only to find their entire communication network collapsing into static. Unable to coordinate, they were picked off by Yakuza soldiers who had learned to move in perfect silence. But it was in Moscow that Earth's criminals showed their true creativity. The aliens landed in Red Square, expecting to claim a symbolic victory. Instead, they found themselves in what appeared to be an exact duplicate of their own flagship's bridge. Every detail was perfect, from the crystalline command stations to the harmonic hum of their engines. It was, of course, a con. Dmitry Petrovich and his team had spent days constructing the elaborate set using salvaged materials from the advanced ships. The aliens, confused and disoriented, followed their training and took their stations. Only when the doors sealed and the gas began flowing did they realize their mistake. Supreme Commander. The tactical officer's harmonics were shrill with panic. We're losing contact with ground forces across the planet. It's not possible. These primitives don't have the technology to show me, Zekthau commanded. The displays lit up with scenes of carnage. Alien soldiers dying to primitive weapons enhanced with their own technology. Traps that violated every rule of civilized warfare. Enemies who struck from shadows and disappeared like smoke. And, worse, their own equipment turning against them. Marcus King's viruses had begun to activate. Weapons fired randomly. Shields flickered and failed at critical moments. Navigation systems led troops into ambushes. The beautiful efficiency of their network technology became a liability as corrupted code spread from unit to unit. Impossible, zictumuteld. Then, louder, impossible. These are criminals. Primitives. How are they doing this? His answer came in the form of a transmission on their own secure channels. The screen showed a human face, ordinary, unremarkable, the kind that could blend into any crowd. John Wick. Commander Zekthau, John said, his voice calm and professional. You wondered how Earth's criminals could challenge your forces. The answer is simple. You prepared for war. We prepared for survival. The transmission cut to scenes of the captured advanced teams, the systematic dismantling of alien technology, the transformation of Earth's military under criminal guidance. It showed soldiers learning to fight without honor, to use deception as a weapon, to strike at vulnerabilities no civilized species would think to protect. Your mistake, John continued, was thinking that our prisons made us weak. Our prisons exist because we needed them, because humans are capable of things your species abandoned millennia ago. You evolved past the need for brutality. We refined it into an art form. Zekthau's form pulsed with rage. All ships, orbital bombardmente, sterilized the entire planet. But the weapons didn't fire. The beautiful, efficient network that connected every ship in the fleet carried Marcus King's masterpiece, a virus that did nothing but change a single value in their targeting systems. The weapons were perfectly functional. They just couldn't target anything on Earth. You're going to order a retreat, John said, his image returning to the screen. You're going to leave this system and never return. Because if you don't, we'll take your ships apart piece by piece. And, Commander? John leaned forward slightly. We'll do it in ways that will make your species abandon war altogether. To emphasize the point, alerts began flooding the flagship systems. Hull breaches on multiple vessels. Life support failures. Navigation systems showing positions that couldn't be real. The virus wasn't just disabling their systems. It was making them actively harmful. How? Zekthau demanded. How did you access our systems? The screen changed to show Marcus King, surrounded by servers built from cannibalized alien technology. You want to know the beautiful irony? Your own efficiency defeated you. Your systems trust each other completely. No firewalls, no isolation, no paranoia. You've been at the top so long, you forgot that survival requires suspicion. We could destroy your world from here, Zekthau threatened. Crack it like an egg. You could try, John agreed. But you won't, because we have something you need. Another display showed the captured advanced team members, alive but imprisoned. Among them was Zektar, the commander's own offspring, though the humans couldn't have known the significance. Your people, John continued, alive. For now, leave, and they'll be returned. Stay, and, well, we're criminals. We've done worse things for worse reasons. The bridge fell silent except for the harmonic thrum of failing systems. Zekthau faced a choice no Galactic Council commander had confronted in 10,000 years. Negotiate with primitives or watch his fleet die to enemies he couldn't see, using methods he couldn't comprehend. Supreme Commander, his tactical officer whispered, we've lost 40% of landing forces. Fleet system integrity at 60% and falling. If the cascade continues, Zekthau's form dimmed with defeat. Order the retreat. All ships, all forces. Immediate withdrawal. The retreat was harried by attacks that seemed to come from nowhere. Ships found their hyperdrives mysteriously offline until they jettisoned certain components. Components that Earth's thieves had marked for collection. Dropships racing back to the fleet discovered their navigation systems had been reprogrammed to take scenic routes past Earth's criminal teams, who helped themselves to weapons and supplies. But the final insult came as the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace. Every ship's display system activated simultaneously, showing the same message in perfect galactic standard. Earth criminals thank you for the technology donation. Don't come back. The Baba Yaga. As the fleet vanished into hyperspace, celebrations erupted across Earth. But in secure facilities, the real work was just beginning. They had won the first round through surprise and psychological warfare. The galaxy now knew Earth was not easy prey. In a bunker beneath Prague, John Wick met with world leaders and criminal masterminds alike. The war was won, but the future remained uncertain. Earth had announced itself to the galaxy not as a military power, but as something far more dangerous, a species that had weaponized survival itself. They'll be back, General Harrison said. Maybe not the Galactic Council, but others. Pirates, scavengers, species looking to test themselves against us. Then, we'll be ready, John replied. We've shown the galaxy what Earth's criminals can do when threatened. Imagine what we'll accomplish with time to prepare. The director raised a glass of vodka, a toast to the strangest alliance in human history. To Earth's monsters, she said. May our enemies never forget why we needed prisons. Around the table, killers and thieves, soldiers and politicians raised their glasses. They had saved the world by abandoning the rules that civilized species live by. In doing so, they had discovered a truth the galaxy would learn to fear. Humans didn't just break rules. They broke them creatively, viciously, and with a smile. And when the survival of their species was at stake, there was no line they wouldn't cross, no method they wouldn't employ, no mercy they wouldn't withhold. The Galactic Council had mocked Earth's criminals, calling them primitive and weak. Now those same criminals had access to advanced alien technology and the backing of Earth's governments. The galaxy had created its own worst nightmare. Monsters with the tools of gods, and the morality of survivors. Earth was safe, but the galaxy? The galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the failed invasion, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The vast assembly hall, which had once echoed with laughter at Earth's expense, now thrummed with nervous energy. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss the entity they had created through their own arrogance. A planet of armed criminals with stolen technology and nothing to lose. The situation has escalated beyond all projections, announced the Centauri delegate, her 6 arms gesturing at holographic displays. Earth hasn't just defended itself. It's expanding. The displays showed a map of local space around Sol System. Where once there had been empty void, now a network of stations and defensive platforms spread like a cancer. Each construction bore the hallmark of human engineering, ugly, functional, and bristling with weapons that shouldn't exist. They call it the Underground Railroad to the Stars, the Vorthan representative added, his energy form flickering with distaste. Pirates, smugglers, and criminals from across the galaxy are flocking to Earth's protection. They're teaching humans their techniques while learning human methods of unconventional warfare. Commander Zekthau, demoted but still present as an advisor, spoke from his position at the witness podium. You want to know what we're truly facing? Let me show you what Earth has become. The main display activated, showing footage from a recent incident. A Zarathi slave ship, carrying thousands of captives from a dozen worlds, had ventured too close to Sol System. The recording showed what happened next. A single human ship, barely 1/100th the size of the slaver, had attached itself to the Zarathi vessel's hull like a parasite. Within minutes, the slave ship's own security systems turned on the crew. Doors sealed, trapping slavers in sections that rapidly vented atmosphere. Meanwhile, every slave collar simultaneously deactivated. The boarding party that followed wasn't military. The footage showed humans moving through the ship with casual efficiency, killing slavers with weapons that range from advanced plasma rifles to what appeared to be sharpened pieces of the ship's own hull. Leading them was a figure the galaxy had learned to fear, John Wick, the Baba Yaga, now bearing the unofficial title of Earth's ambassador of unconventional warfare. They freed 8,000 slaves, Zekthau continued, killed every slaver aboard. But here's the truly terrifying part. They did it with a crew of 6 humans and technology cobbled together from salvage. When questioned, their leader said this was a training exercise for new recruits. Murmurs of alarm rippled through the assembly. If that was training, what would actual operations look like? It gets worse, the Andromedan delegate interjected. They're not just freeing slaves. They're recruiting them, teaching them human methods, creating what they call chapters on liberated worlds. Each one a cell of beings trained to fight without honor, without rules. On Earth, in what had once been a maximum security prison, John Wick stood before the latest class of galactic recruits. The audience was diverse. A crystalline Andromedan who had escaped processing camps, a gaseous Vorthan whose colony had been strip-mined, a young Zarathi who had turned against her species' slaving tradition. All had come to Earth to learn from the masters of dirty warfare. Lesson 1, John began, his voice carrying the weight of hard-won experience. Your enemy's strength is always their weakness. The Galactic Council values order, efficiency, trust. So you become chaos, waste, and betrayal. He gestured to Marcus King, who activated a holographic display. Every advanced species in the galaxy uses quantum entanglement for communication. It's instantaneous, unhackable by conventional means. But humans? We figured out how to hack it by not hacking it at all. The display showed a communications node. We can't break their encryption, but we can make them doubt it. Send false messages that are almost right. Create delays that feel like system lag. Make them question every order, verify every command. Their efficiency becomes paranoia. A 4-armed student raised their appendage. But that's psychological warfare. It's banned by every civilized treaty. Exactly, Sophia replied from her position by the door, her enhanced dogs scanning the recruits with senses that could detect deception. Treaties only matter if both sides follow them. The moment they decided to enslave Earth, they abandoned civilization. We're just speaking a language they forgot existed. The lessons continued. How to turn medical scanners into torture devices. How to make shields that protected against everything except what they were supposed to stop. How to use an enemy's own moral code against them, making them hesitate at crucial moments while you struck without mercy. But it wasn't just tactics Earth was teaching. It was a philosophy, a way of thinking that the galaxy had evolved past. The criminals who had saved Earth were creating something new, a network of beings who understood that survival trumped nobility, that victory mattered more than honor. Back at the Galactic Council, debate raged over how to respond to the human threat. We could blockade their system, suggested one delegate. Prevent this infection from spreading. With what fleet? Another countered. Half our ships won't enter human space after what happened to the invasion force. The other half are demanding hazard pay that would bankrupt sectors. Perhaps negotiation. I tried that. The speaker was unexpected, Zektar, the captured commander who had been returned as promised. His crystalline form bore new patterns, scars from his captivity. I spent weeks as their prisoner. They treated me well, showed me their cities, their culture. Do you know what terrified me most? They were kind, gentle, until threatened. He paused, letting his words sink in. They have a saying, demons run when a good man goes to war. But they're not good men. They're criminals who chose to protect their world. Imagine what they'll do to protect their new allies. The debate continued, but the conclusion was foregone. The Galactic Council had no good options. Military force had failed. Economic sanctions were meaningless against a species that thrived on black market trade. Diplomatic pressure required leverage they didn't possess. Meanwhile, Earth's influence spread like wildfire through the galaxy's underworld. Criminal organizations that had operated in shadows for millennia suddenly had a new patron, a world that not only accepted them, but celebrated their skills. The techniques that had saved Earth were being refined, evolved, spread to every corner of civilized space. On a remote space station at the edge of Council space, a meeting was taking place that would have been impossible a year ago. Representatives from the galaxy's most notorious criminal organizations sat across from John Wick and his team, negotiating the formation of what they call the Shadow Compact. The terms are simple, John explained. Earth provides sanctuary, training, and resources. In exchange, you follow our rules. No slavery, no genocide, no targeting of civilians except in defense. Break these rules, and we hunt you down with the same methods we used on the Council. And if the Council comes for us, asked a tentacled crime lord whose organization controlled half the galaxy's smuggling routes. John smiled, a rare expression that made several attendees unconsciously lean back. Then, you'll learn why Earth's prisons were built to hold us, not protect us. The Shadow Compact was signed that day, creating an alliance that would reshape galactic politics. Within weeks, slave routes that had operated for thousands of years were shut down by forces that struck from nowhere and vanished like smoke. Pirates who had preyed on helpless colonies found themselves hunted by predators who made their own methods look civilized. Criminal cartels that dealt in genocide were systematically dismantled by competitors who had learned human efficiency. The galaxy's underworld had rules now. Earth's rules. And the enforcement mechanism wasn't law or military might. It was the promise that breaking those rules would bring the attention of Earth's monsters. A year after the invasion, Ambassador Lucia Moretti stood before the Galactic Council. She had been chosen for her ability to lie with a smile, to project warmth while delivering threats. The criminals had become diplomats, but they hadn't forgotten their roots. The Council has a choice, she said, her voice carrying perfectly through the chamber's acoustics. Accept Earth as a sovereign power and recognize our right to offer sanctuary to those you've failed, or continue treating us as primitives and criminals. She paused, letting anticipation build. I should warn you, we're much better at being criminals. Is that a threat? Demanded the Andromedan delegate. Oh no, Lucia replied with a brilliant smile. Threats are what civilized species make. We're criminals, remember? We make promises, and we keep them. She gestured to the holographic displays around the chamber. 40% reduction in slave trading. 60% decrease in piracy against protected worlds. Colony raids down by 80%. All because Earth's criminals decided to enforce rules you couldn't. We're not your enemy, honored delegates. We're your garbage collectors, handling the problems you're too civilized to touch. And if we refuse your proposal, asked the Vorthan. Lucia's smile never wavered. Then nothing changes. We continue protecting those who seek our help. Our methods continue spreading. More of your citizens learn that there's an alternative to accepting victimhood. And eventually, you'll realize that we've become the de facto police force for half the galaxy. Except we police according to survivors' justice, not your laws. The vote was closer than expected, but pragmatism won. The Galactic Council formally recognized Earth's sovereignty and its right to grant sanctuary. In exchange, Earth agreed to certain limitations on its expansion and a formal framework for cooperation on matters of mutual interest. It was a victory for diplomacy, but everyone knew the truth. Earth had won through blackmail backed by violence, through criminal methods applied on a galactic scale. The barbarians hadn't just stormed the gates. They had convinced civilization to pay them for protection. In the years that followed, Earth became a paradox that confounded galactic sociology. A world where the worst of humanity had become its best offenders. Where criminals wrote the laws that kept the peace. Where the skills that civilization had tried to eliminate became the tools that protected it. John Wick rarely left Earth anymore, content to train new generations in the art of survival. But his influence was everywhere, in the whispered warnings that kept slavers from certain sectors, in the tactical doctrines that turned victims into predators, in a simple truth that had reshaped the galaxy. Never mock Earth's criminals. They are what happens when humanity stops pretending to be civilized and embraces what it truly is, a species that survived by being worse than its monsters, and better at it than anyone else. The Galactic Council had learned its lesson. Earth's criminals were not weak primitives to be processed and enslaved. They were the antibodies of a species that had evolved on a death world, refined by millennia of conflict, and given purpose by an external threat. Now, they were the galaxy's problem, and its salvation. In a quiet bar in Prague, the Continental had expanded to welcome non-human guests. Former enemies shared drinks and war stories, united by their understanding of a simple truth. In a universe full of predators, sometimes the only way to survive was to become something worse. John Wick raised his glass to the assembled crowd of humans and aliens, criminals and soldiers, monsters and heroes. To Earth, he said simply, and to the criminals who saved it. The toast echoed through the bar and, in its own way, across the galaxy. Earth was safe. Its criminals were legends. And somewhere in the void, other species were learning to fear the sound of human laughter, because it meant the monsters were coming, and they fought without rules. The Baba Yaga had worked again, and this time, he had taught an entire galaxy why Earth's criminals deserve their reputation. Not as victims to be mocked, but as survivors to be feared. And in the end, that made all the difference.